I am Lauren Whitaker, 34, and literally last weekend, my lifelong dream of becoming a respected judge collided with decades of family dismissals when my glamorous sister Heather openly mocked my achievement, igniting the spark that'll soon change everything. The pride I'd spent years building up, brick by brick, in silence, exploded into a full-on family disaster right at our so-called happy reunion dinner. Heather, the princess everyone adored, straight up sneered at my announcement, calling my promotion a cute little side gig, and when I clapped back that my side gig was actually a lifetime appointment, the entire room froze. "You just can't help embarrassing yourself, can you?" Heather hissed, her perfectly manicured nails tapping dismissively on her wine glass, everyone else staring at me like I'd grown a second head. But here's the tea. Heather's cruel shade didn't break me. It finally woke me up. This wasn't a setback, it was a call to action. I was done pushing back quietly. This was my time to flip the script, take control, and change everything. Before you dive into the drama, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, hit subscribe, and buckle up, because trust me, revenge might be sweet, but reclaiming your self-worth is even sweeter. Looking back, you won't believe what they'll do once they realize their little embarrassment is about to become the family's only lifeline. Honestly, I can't remember a time Heather wasn't the center of attention, soaking up the spotlight as effortlessly as breathing. Meanwhile, my own successes, honor roll, graduating summa cum laude from law school, landing my first job at a prestigious firm, went ignored or ridiculed as boring. My parents, Richard and Charlene, raised us under one twisted philosophy: beauty, charm, and status always triumphed over substance. And Heather was their perfect poster child. Gorgeous, charming, the trophy wife who snagged millionaire investor Dax Harrington, a man whose wallet opened doors Heather's shallow charisma couldn't. I wasn't bitter, well, maybe a little. But I genuinely thought if I worked hard enough, eventually someone would see my worth. Someone would finally look past the glitter and glamour Heather effortlessly exuded and recognize me as something special too. But year after year, my accomplishments were swept under the rug, politely ignored or outright dismissed. "Lauren's reliable," they'd say, as if reliable was the worst possible insult. Heather, meanwhile, was praised simply for breathing, effortlessly elevated by her socialite reputation and her husband's dazzling wealth. But wealth built on what, exactly? Turns out, status and success built on shaky ground eventually crumble, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Right now, all you need to know is this. Last weekend's dinner was the final straw, the moment my patience finally snapped. Heather's venomous smile, my parents' silent agreement with her insults, it was the spark I needed. In that moment I realized I was done chasing validation from people who never planned on giving it. No more playing nice, no more hoping for scraps of approval tossed my way. I had reached a tipping point. And as my family smugly drank their wine and continued their subtle ridicule, oblivious to what I'd already achieved and what was coming next, I made a silent promise to myself. I was through being invisible. My story was about to get loud, and for once, it was going to be told on my terms. Being invisible in my own family was an art form I mastered early on. If there was an Olympic gold for being overlooked, I'd have a trophy case stuffed full. Every memory from my childhood was tinged with the shadow of Heather's seemingly effortless sparkle, a sparkle everyone else worshipped like the sun. Even our elementary school years were starkly different. Heather's report cards displayed proudly on the refrigerator door, her C in art praised as creative genius. Meanwhile, my A+ in history received nothing but a distracted pat on the head. At Heather's Sweet 16, my parents spent months planning a gala fit for royalty, complete with a custom pink dress, catering from one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city, and a guest list that read like a teen celebrity magazine. My own birthday that year was celebrated quietly in our kitchen, a grocery store cupcake hastily stuck with a single candle. Mom's excuse was, "Oh, Lauren, you never seem to want to fuss." Truth is, I just learned early not to ask. Then there was Heather's wedding, the pinnacle of my family's obsession with appearances. She floated down the aisle in a designer gown while Dad walked proudly beside her, tears of joy streaming down his cheeks. I stood quietly as her maid of honor, wearing a dress she'd deliberately chosen to downplay my presence, a muted beige that blended me into the background. Even when I gave my carefully prepared speech, heartfelt, sincere, crafted with care, I watched as my parents whispered distractedly, eyes glazed, already mentally calculating the social cachet Heather's new marriage would bring. And when I graduated law school, top of my class, thinking this had to finally be my moment, I scanned the audience, desperate for my family's proud faces among the cheering crowd. Instead, Mom and Dad barely glanced up from their phones, and Heather was conspicuously absent, at a spa retreat celebrating her first anniversary with Dax. Later at dinner, Dad joked, "Well, it's not like you're curing cancer, Lauren, it's just paperwork in a robe, right?" He chuckled lightly. Mom laughed along. I smiled tightly, swallowing tears, and pushed down the ache in my chest. The worst part wasn't their dismissal. It was the constant wondering. Why wasn't I enough? Why couldn't they see past Heather's shiny exterior to the value I brought? The intelligence, the determination, the quiet courage it took to push forward despite their indifference. For years I chased their approval like a carrot dangling just out of reach, believing if I could just achieve a little more, succeed a little harder, they'd finally see me. But their attention was a moving target, always just beyond my grasp. Heather's every trivial accomplishment eclipsed my real ones. When she launched a failed line of designer scarves, my parents threw a lavish party celebrating her entrepreneurial spirit. When I won my first difficult court case, they didn't even bother asking about it. For so long, their neglect shaped how I saw myself. Small, unimportant, forever in Heather's shadow. But standing in the kitchen after that humiliating reunion dinner, staring at the family photos lining the wall, Heather smiling center frame, me always off to the side, I felt something inside me shifting. Maybe the problem wasn't that they couldn't see me clearly. Maybe it was that I was finally starting to see them clearly. I remember the exact night I decided enough was enough. It was late autumn, almost midnight, and the lights of downtown shimmered beyond my cramped office window. I'd spent another exhausting day buried in case files, defending clients I barely believed in, fighting battles that left me drained and questioning my path. Sitting there, lost in the glow of my desk lamp, an overwhelming sense of restlessness stirred deep inside my chest. It whispered clearly, "This isn't enough." Not even close. Law was my passion, but I was tired of just being another attorney lost in a sea of gray suits and indifferent justice. I wanted more. I wanted to be part of real change, shaping decisions, not just pleading for them. But becoming a judge felt impossible, especially since, even then, my family's doubts echoed relentlessly in my head. "You, Lauren? A judge?" I imagined Heather's mocking laughter, felt Mom's subtle eye roll, Dad's polite silence. Even imagining their reactions hurt, but it also lit a fire under me. Their disbelief was fuel for my determination. That night, I sat in the dim quiet of my office, scrolling through requirements, stories, testimonials of other women who'd shattered glass ceilings. I printed out biographies of trailblazing judges, taping them discreetly inside my planner, hiding them beneath stacks of briefs, my quiet rebellion against years of invisibility. My secret became my sanctuary. If they wouldn't see me, I'd make sure the world did. For months afterward, my life narrowed to a single, powerful goal: the bench. I cut back sleep, declined weekend brunch invitations, missed birthdays and get-togethers. Weekends blurred into late nights of study sessions, writing statements, completing applications, all behind closed doors. My cozy apartment became my hidden fortress, littered with legal texts, exam practice books, and highlighted journals. I existed in a haze of determination, coffee, and quiet ambition. Every milestone was mine alone to celebrate. I remember vividly receiving my first interview invitation, the excitement surging so strongly I almost called Heather to share the news, until reality checked me sharply. My family wouldn't congratulate me, they'd dismiss me yet again. It hurt briefly but quickly became liberating. My dream was mine alone, and for once that felt empowering rather than lonely. Then, finally, it happened. I remember sitting in my car, parked behind the courthouse, hands shaking as I read the official email. "Lauren Whitaker, we are honored to appoint you as a judge of the Superior Court." Tears blurred my vision, relief and pride flooding me in equal measure. All the late nights, ignored invites, relentless doubt, and secret striving had culminated in this single transformative moment. And yet, I kept it hidden. I didn't tell anyone in my family. partly because I dreaded their dismissive reaction, but more because I wanted something untouched by their judgment, something purely mine, untainted by their apathy. I cherished the secret like a precious gem, holding it close, savoring its brilliance, knowing it had the power to change everything, but only when I chose to reveal it. Months passed, the robes arrived, the ceremony was scheduled. I continued attending family dinners, enduring Heather's condescending smirks, quietly tolerating Mom's dismissive remarks about my little law job, feeling Dad's detached politeness. But beneath the surface I was changing, strengthening, growing more confident in my quiet rebellion. They had no idea what I'd built behind their backs, but soon, very soon, they would, and it would shake their shallow world to its core. The annual Whitaker family dinner was always a grand, glittering affair, hosted of course by Heather. Each year she'd attempt to outdo herself, as if determined to remind us all of her supposed perfection. This year's theme was Golden Glamour, a painfully unsubtle nod to Dax's latest billion-dollar milestone, something Heather gleefully announced at every opportunity. The invitation arrived embossed in gold leaf, mockingly lavish against my modest mailbox. That night, as I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, smoothing out imaginary wrinkles from my simple navy dress, anxiety churned in my stomach. Tonight's dinner wasn't just another opportunity for Heather's casual cruelty. It marked exactly 2 days before I would publicly don judicial robes for the first time. My new appointment was all over the local legal journals, whispered about in the courthouse halls, yet somehow invisible to my family. I had half expected them to stumble across the news accidentally, but even success didn't seem enough to puncture their bubble of indifference. Stepping through Heather's door was like entering a magazine spread. Golden balloons floated above the lavish foyer, champagne towers shimmered under chandeliers, and tables overflowed with extravagant floral displays. Heather greeted me at the door, air-kissing both cheeks without even meeting my eyes. "Lauren, you made it!" she cooed, feigning surprise. "We were just saying how brave you are to keep showing up solo year after year." Her words stung, but I forced a polite smile. "It's lovely to see you too, Heather." Mom appeared, eyes flicking quickly over my modest dress. "Oh honey, didn't you have something brighter to wear? It's such a festive occasion." "I think she looks appropriate," Dad murmured vaguely, glancing away almost instantly. I took a slow breath, reminding myself of the secret strength I carried within, but as the evening dragged on, each carefully veiled jab pierced deeper than the last. Heather dominated every conversation, loudly celebrating Dax's recent financial conquests as if she'd personally orchestrated them. Dad raised a glass, declaring Heather the pride of the Whitaker family, prompting a round of applause that echoed painfully in my ears. The irony burned. Here I was, days from becoming one of the youngest judges in state history, yet I remained invisible, overshadowed by Heather's superficial accomplishments. They didn't even ask about my life, content to fill in the blanks with assumptions and dismissive shrugs. When dinner was served, Heather took a seat across from me, leaning forward conspiratorially. "Tell me, Lauren, any big career moves coming up, or are you still stuck in paperwork?" I felt the heat rising to my cheeks, anger warring with frustration. I imagined standing up, announcing my news, demanding they finally acknowledge my worth, but a lifetime of rejection stilled my voice. Instead, I smiled calmly, quietly stabbing at the salad on my plate. Heather mistook my silence for surrender, smirking triumphantly. "Oh, don't look so glum, sis. Maybe someday you'll surprise us all." A slow, knowing smile crept across my lips, fueled by the irony she couldn't yet grasp. "Heather," I replied, voice steady, "I think someday might be closer than you realize." She blinked, momentarily thrown by my tone, before laughing lightly and turning away, dismissing me yet again. But as she basked in her golden spotlight, utterly blind to what was about to unfold, I felt a quiet satisfaction bloom inside me. Heather had always loved surprises after all. And this one? This one would be unforgettable. Dinner dragged painfully onward, each new course punctuated by Heather's calculated barbs. Every compliment she gave felt like a velvet-covered dagger, carefully chosen to remind me exactly where she believed I belonged, in her shadow. Each question from Mom and Dad was steeped in quiet disappointment, gently but firmly reinforcing their belief that I was destined for mediocrity. "So, Lauren, Mom began casually, swirling her wine. Have you thought about dating again? Heather's always mentioning some eligible men in Dax's circle. Heather smirked knowingly. Oh, Mom, I don't think Lauren's interested in anyone successful. She prefers, how do you put it, sis, simplicity? The table chuckled lightly, amused by Heather's practiced insult. I felt heat creep up my neck but forced myself to respond calmly. My career keeps me plenty busy, thanks. Heather's laughter rang out, sharp and clear. Oh right, your career must be exhausting, organizing papers and fetching coffee. Dad cleared his throat, eyes carefully avoiding mine. Now Heather, let's give Lauren some credit. Not everyone can handle high-pressure careers. Sometimes quiet stability is admirable. Heather's eyes glittered triumphantly, the damage done. I gripped my fork tighter, determined not to react. The internal storm churned relentlessly. But outwardly I maintained composure. They didn't deserve to see my pain. Not tonight. Throughout dessert, Heather regaled us with stories about her lavish trips, each tale designed to underscore her effortless success. The room filled with appreciative murmurs and polite laughter. I silently counted breaths, reminding myself that soon, none of this would matter. Then, inevitably, the spotlight swung back to me. Heather tilted her head, feigning interest. Lauren, remind me again, exactly how long have you been stuck at your little firm? I admire your loyalty, even if ambition isn't your strength. I met her gaze squarely, my voice low but firm. Actually, ambition is something I understand quite well, maybe even better than you. Her eyes narrowed subtly, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. Around us, conversation dimmed. Heather quickly recovered, flashing a brittle smile. "Ah, sweetie, pretending to be tough doesn't suit you." My heart pounded angrily, but I remained steady. Maybe you don't know me as well as you think. For the briefest moment, Heather hesitated, thrown off by my quiet defiance. But she quickly regained control, smiling indulgently. Cute, Lauren, really cute. Mom leaned over, whispering loudly enough for everyone to hear. Honey, please don't make a scene. This is Heather's night. Dad simply sighed, looking away. I felt utterly isolated as always, but something felt different this time. Anger was rapidly transforming into clarity. Heather smiled again, sensing victory. Lauren knows her place, don't you, sis? I opened my mouth to respond, but suddenly my phone buzzed urgently against my leg. Glancing discreetly, my breath caught. A message from the courthouse. My pulse quickened. Heather's venom faded to background noise. Everything all right, Lauren? Heather drawled mockingly. Don't tell me, some paperwork emergency? I inhaled slowly, deliberately, feeling the powerful secret hum beneath my skin. Actually, Heather, I'd say things are just starting to get interesting. The room fell into puzzled silence, but I didn't explain further. For the first time, Heather's confidence wavered visibly. Her carefully constructed image was about to fracture, and soon, the entire world would see through her facade. I stood, calmly folding my napkin. Thanks for dinner. It's been enlightening. As I left the table, their confused whispers trailed behind me, but I no longer cared. Tomorrow, everything would change, and Heather would finally discover just how wrong she'd always been. I was halfway to Heather's grand front door when her voice sliced through the air, clear and triumphant. Wait, Lauren, don't leave yet. We have something important to say. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to keep walking, but curiosity, and the quiet, bitter hope for recognition, forced me to turn around. Heather stood at the head of the table, flanked by Mom and Dad, their expressions serious and resolute. We've been talking as a family, Heather began slowly, eyes sparkling with cruel delight, and we've decided it's time to officially acknowledge reality. My heart sank, dread pooling heavily in my chest. What's that supposed to mean? Mom shifted awkwardly, her eyes downcast, avoiding mine as she spoke. Lauren, honey, we appreciate your effort, really we do, but it's clear you're not interested in living up to the Whitaker name. Heather stepped forward, placing a delicate hand on Mom's shoulder, taking charge effortlessly as always. What Mom's trying to say is, you're officially free, from us, from the expectations, everything. Consider yourself released. I stared at her blankly. Released? What are you talking about? She smiled indulgently as though speaking to a child. Lauren, darling, we're disowning you. Cutting ties, no more awkward dinners, no more disappointing moments. You're finally free to embrace your mediocrity without embarrassing us. A stunned silence filled the room. punctuated only by the faint sound of champagne bubbles popping gently in forgotten glasses. Everyone's eyes locked onto me, curiosity mixing with pity. Heather watched expectantly, savoring the moment, waiting for my reaction. But in that silence, clarity struck like lightning. I'd always feared this moment, rejection, abandonment, but now, standing in it, a strange relief washed over me. Their approval was an illusion. A trap I'd chased far too long. I straightened my shoulders, lifting my chin. "You know what, Heather? Maybe you're right," I said, my voice remarkably steady. "Maybe being mediocre in your eyes is exactly the freedom I've always needed." Her smug expression faltered slightly, confused by my calm. "Don't pretend you're okay with this, Lauren." I stepped closer, feeling a newfound confidence building inside me. "Heather, what you call mediocrity, most people call integrity, something you wouldn't recognize." Her cheeks flushed crimson, embarrassment flickering across her face before she quickly masked it with disdain. "Fine, Lauren. Cling to your integrity. Just remember, integrity doesn't pay the bills or earn respect. But I guess you wouldn't know about that." The buzzing in my pocket grew insistent again, vibrating urgently. I ignored it, determined to finish this moment on my own terms. "Respect isn't something you can buy, Heather. It's something you earn. But I wouldn't expect you to understand that." Her eyes narrowed dangerously, her polished facade cracking under the weight of my quiet defiance. "Get out, Lauren. You're done embarrassing this family." I looked around the table, eyes passing over the faces of the people I'd spent a lifetime trying to please. Mom wouldn't meet my gaze, Dad looked uncomfortable, but silent. Heather stood triumphant but shaken, her confidence dented by my unexpected composure. "Gladly," I replied calmly, meeting her gaze one last time. "Enjoy your illusion, Heather. It won't last forever." As I finally walked out, phone buzzing relentlessly, I felt no sadness or loss. Only the powerful realization that this wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of my true story and the end of theirs. Heather had no idea what she'd unleashed by cutting me loose, but soon, everyone, including her, would finally understand exactly who I was, and what I'd always been capable. I barely made it to my car before the persistent buzzing of my phone finally demanded my attention. Slamming the door shut, I pulled the phone from my pocket, half expecting another meaningless email or some trivial courthouse update. Instead, the screen lit up urgently with multiple missed calls and a flurry of text messages marked urgent. My heart jumped, pulse quickening as I swiped open the latest message from my clerk Robin, Judge Whitaker. Massive breaking news. Dax Harrington indicted in Ponzi scheme, millions missing. Heather Whitaker Harrington named as co-conspirator. Preliminary arraignment set for tomorrow. You're presiding. Call me ASAP. For a moment everything blurred. The glow from Heather's extravagant mansion behind me, the bitter taste of rejection still lingering, now eclipsed by the shocking reality of Robin's words. Dax? Indicted? Heather? A co-conspirator? Tomorrow? In my courtroom? A strange sound escaped me, a mix between stunned laughter and disbelief. This had to be a twisted joke. But Robin's careful professionalism was never prone to exaggeration. My fingers trembled as I dialed her number, each ring echoing in my chest like a countdown. She picked up instantly. "Lauren, thank God. You saw the message?" "Yes," my voice came out strained. "Tell me it's not true, Robin." "It's true." Robin's normally calm voice carried a nervous edge. Dax Harrington's entire fortune was a fraud. Hundreds of investors wiped out. Heather's implicated too. They've both been arrested, Lauren. Bail hearing scheduled for your courtroom tomorrow morning. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel, breathing deeply. Heather's carefully constructed fairy tale had just collapsed spectacularly, and somehow I was now at the very center of its dramatic unraveling. I can't preside," I said weakly. "Heather's my sister." "You can recuse yourself," Robin said cautiously. "But Lauren, think carefully. This isn't just about Heather. Every investor she defrauded needs justice. You're the judge who can ensure that." Robin's words cut straight through the shock, grounding me instantly. Heather's deceit had hurt real people. Families who trusted Dax, who'd believed Heather's glittering persona was genuine. And now, suddenly, the weight of justice rested squarely on my shoulders. "No," I whispered, feeling steel return to my voice. "I'm not recusing myself." "You're sure?" Robin asked gently. "This won't be easy. Your entire family will be." "My family just disowned me," I interrupted sharply. I owe them nothing, but those people Heather hurt, they deserve accountability. I won't walk away. Robin exhaled slowly. All right, then we're behind you, Judge Whitaker, whatever you need. I ended the call, the silence in my car thick with anticipation. Outside, Heather's mansion still glittered obliviously, an ironic, golden illusion that was about to be shattered by cold, undeniable truth. The sister who'd belittled me, who'd dismissed every genuine effort I'd ever made, was about to face justice in my courtroom. Tomorrow morning, Heather would finally be forced to confront reality, without family status or superficial charm to protect her. And as surreal as it felt, I was ready. My robes had been earned through struggle, dedication, and quiet resilience, everything Heather had ridiculed. As I turned the ignition, pulling away from Heather's shimmering fantasy for the final time, clarity and purpose crystallized within me. This wasn't revenge, it was responsibility, a profound duty to honor the integrity I'd silently nurtured all these years. Heather had always dismissed me as inconsequential, unaware that beneath my quiet surface I'd built strength, compassion, and unwavering resolve. Tomorrow, she'd finally see me clearly, and discover exactly how powerful quiet determination could be. My courtroom buzzed with electric anticipation the following morning, every seat filled, whispers darting between reporters, colleagues, and curious spectators drawn by the scandal. I stood quietly behind my bench, robes perfectly pressed, breathing steady, heart hammering beneath layers of outward calm. The gravity of this moment wasn't lost on me. Today would shatter illusions that expose truths and rewrite my family's twisted narrative once and for all. The double doors swung open and Heather entered, escorted firmly by 2 bailiffs. Her glossy veneer was gone, replaced by a pale, shaken woman in a plain navy pantsuit, handcuffed wrists trembling slightly. Her eyes scanned the room nervously until they landed squarely on me, and widened in shock. She visibly stumbled, the realization dawning with brutal clarity. "You've got to be kidding," she muttered audibly, her voice sharp with disbelief. My heart tightened painfully, but I maintained a composed expression. "Mrs. Harrington, please take your place." Heather obeyed stiffly, eyes never leaving my face, disbelief quickly shifting to hostility. The whispers intensified, reporters leaning forward eagerly. The prosecutor stood, outlining the charges with clinical precision. Massive financial fraud, deliberate deception, millions of dollars vanished into Heather and Dax's lavish lifestyle. The details were damning, undeniable, painting a grim portrait of greed and deceit. When the prosecutor finished, silence filled the courtroom. I finally spoke, voice calm and clear. "Mrs. Harrington, do you understand the charges against you?" Heather glared defiantly, bitterness saturating her voice. "Is this a joke? Lauren, you can't possibly think you're qualified to judge me." Murmurs erupted, cameras clicking furiously, capturing every second. I leaned forward slightly, gaze unwavering. "My qualifications aren't the issue here, answer the question." Heather's fury sharpened, desperation edging into her tone. "You're pathetic, Lauren. Always jealous, always invisible. Do you really think wearing a robe makes you important? You're worthless. You always have been." Gasps echoed through the room, everyone holding their breath, waiting for my reaction. Heather stared defiantly, expecting tears, anger, humiliation, but something had fundamentally shifted since last night. I felt nothing but calm certainty as I met her gaze steadily. "Heather, this courtroom isn't our childhood dinner table. Your insults won't silence justice. Here, facts matter, not fantasies." For the first time, her confidence wavered, voice dropping to a fragile whisper. "You can't do this to me. I'm your sister." I leaned forward further, my voice gentle but unyielding. "Justice doesn't recognize family ties, it recognizes truth. Something you've never valued." Heather flinched visibly, eyes widening, the reality of her situation finally sinking in. Her carefully built facade cracked irreparably under the harsh courtroom lights, her shoulders slumped, defeat overtaking bravado. For once, she had no retort, no witty comeback. She was utterly exposed. I turned to the prosecutor. "Bail is denied. Mrs. Harrington will remain in custody until trial." Heather's muffled sob echoed softly, utterly alone in her disgrace. She was escorted out, head bowed, the glamorous image she'd built crumbling before everyone's eyes. As the courtroom emptied slowly, murmurs of disbelief and awe drifting behind them, I gathered my papers calmly. For the first time, justice had fully illuminated our toxic family dynamic. Heather's vicious words had lost their sting entirely, exposed for the hollow cruelty they were. She'd finally confronted reality, and her illusions had shattered in front of everyone. Walking from the bench, robe billowing softly behind me, I felt stronger than ever. This wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. Heather's downfall had been her own doing, but my rise, built on integrity, effort, and quiet resilience, was mine alone. My family's hypocrisy had finally been laid bare, and I had chosen truth over approval. Whatever came next, I was ready to meet it on my terms. I'd reclaimed my story, and finally, beautifully, my own voice. Later that evening, still buzzing with adrenaline from the courtroom drama, I found myself standing on my best friend Marcy's doorstep. Her cozy bungalow had always been my refuge, a place far removed from family judgment and impossible expectations. As the door swung open, Marcy's face lit up with a knowing warmth that instantly soothed the knots in my stomach. "Get in here," she ordered softly, pulling me into a fierce hug. Behind her, our close friends Elena and Greg waved from the kitchen, already busy pouring glasses of wine and piling plates with comfort food. The inviting smell of pasta and freshly baked bread enveloped me, instantly easing the tension I'd been holding tightly inside. "Did you see the news?" Elena asked, ushering me gently to a seat at the table. "It's everywhere, Lauren. You okay?" "I'm fine," I said slowly, feeling the truth of it sink in deeply. "Honestly, better than fine." Marcy squeezed my shoulder reassuringly. "We're so proud of you, Lauren. Seriously, you handled that situation with Heather perfectly." "Yeah," Greg added, setting a steaming bowl of pasta in front of me. "Heather spent a lifetime putting you down. You finally showed everyone who you really are." I smiled softly, comforted by their unwavering support. It was worlds away from the toxic atmosphere of family dinners. Here, surrounded by friends who saw and valued me fully, I could finally breathe. We ate, laughed, and talked for hours, the conversation drifting comfortably from courtroom drama to Elena's upcoming wedding, Greg's new job, and Marcy's hilarious dating mishaps. For the first time in years, I felt truly at home, belonging fully without needing to prove my worth. Later, as dishes were cleared and candles flickered gently, Marcy leaned back in her chair, regarding me thoughtfully. "Lauren, you know you've always deserved better, right?" My eyes softened, heart squeezing with gratitude. It took me far too long to realize it. Greg nodded quietly. "Family's complicated, but real family, the people who show up, who support you without condition, they're the ones who matter most." I let his words wash over me, resonating deeply. "It's strange," I admitted softly. "I've chased approval from my parents and Heather for so long, I almost missed the incredible family I'd built right here." Elena squeezed my hand gently. "You didn't miss it. You just finally realized what you've always had." As the conversation drifted, laughter and warmth filling the room, I found myself thinking about Heather, not with anger or resentment, but with quiet sadness. Her entire life had been defined by superficial approval, fleeting applause, and empty validation. Without those things, she was lost. But I'd found genuine connection, real love that required no proving or begging. Marcy saw the shift in my expression, nudging me gently. "You okay?" "I'm more than okay," I said, voice steady with quiet certainty. "I spent years believing I needed my family's approval to feel whole, but sitting here, with all of you, I finally get it. Family isn't blood, it's choosing each other, showing up when it matters." Around the table, smiles spread softly, affirming what we'd all known for years. Tonight had changed everything, not just exposing Heather's lies, but illuminating my truth. I'd finally seen clearly where I belonged. Here, surrounded by people who loved me exactly as I was no longer invisible. I was seen, cherished, and deeply valued, exactly as I deserved. This was my true family, and nothing would ever make me doubt my worth again. In the days that followed Heather's courtroom humiliation, the inevitable family fallout erupted spectacularly. My phone lit up with constant calls and texts from mom, dad, cousins, even distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Each message was a desperate plea, masked as concern, urging me to reconsider, to recuse myself, or at least soften my public stance against Heather. The sudden flurry of attention might have once shaken my resolve, but now it only strengthened it. I was done being their obedient scapegoat. One evening, after another exhausting day of fielding calls and managing courtroom demands, I found myself once again sitting at Marcy's dining table, venting my frustrations. Marcy listened patiently, sipping tea and nodding supportively, before finally placing a gentle hand on mine. "Lauren, you know you don't have to answer them, right?" she said softly. "They don't deserve explanations, not after how they treated you." Her words struck deeply. "You're right," I said, sighing heavily, "but setting boundaries has never been my strength." Elena leaned forward thoughtfully. "Then maybe it's time you change that. Your family needs to understand things are different now." I let her words settle inside me, resonating with quiet strength. Elena was right. The time for soft apologies and quiet compromises was long gone. I'd spent my entire life bending, twisting myself to meet their impossible expectations. Now, standing on my own foundation of earned confidence, I finally had the courage to say no. That night, alone in my apartment, I typed out a clear, firm message and sent it to every single family member who'd reached out, starting with my parents. "I appreciate your concern, but my decision is final. This situation isn't personal, it's about justice. Going forward, I will no longer discuss Heather's case or justify my actions. Please respect my boundaries. If you cannot, understand that further communication will end immediately." The moment I pressed send, a wave of relief surged through me. The reactions were immediate and predictable. Shocked, angry responses flooded back instantly, demanding explanations, accusing me of cruelty. But this time I ignored them all. The following day at work, I maintained a focused calm, confidently presiding over the preliminary hearings, unaffected by the family drama brewing outside my courtroom walls. My newfound strength felt powerful yet strangely peaceful, as if I'd finally locked the door against years of emotional invasion. And when Mom appeared unannounced at my office late that afternoon, face etched with frustration, I calmly stood my ground. "Lauren, how can you do this?" she demanded, eyes pleading. "Heather is family. Your sister." "Mom," I responded quietly, firmly, "Heather is responsible for her own choices, just like I'm responsible for mine. I won't compromise my integrity to protect her reputation." "But what about us?" she pleaded, voice breaking. "The family reputation is built on lies," I finished calmly. "It's time we all face that." She stared at me, stunned, clearly expecting me to crumble under the weight of her disappointment. But for once her approval, or lack thereof, held no power over me. "I've set my boundaries clearly," I said, standing slowly. "Please respect them or leave." Mom hesitated briefly, eyes wide with disbelief, then turned abruptly and left without another word. As the door clicked shut, a deep, cleansing breath filled my lungs. I'd finally drawn the line, firmly and without apology. In that moment, I felt fully liberated from the invisible chains I'd worn for years. My family no longer defined my worth, I did. And anyone who couldn't respect that simply wasn't welcome in the life I'd built. These new boundaries weren't just walls to keep them out, they were powerful statements of self-worth. They said clearly, I choose who stays and who leaves. And from now on, that choice was entirely mine. With firm boundaries now protecting my peace, clarity replaced resentment, shifting my energy towards something infinitely more meaningful, reclaiming the Whitaker name. For too long, our family legacy had been synonymous with shallow appearances, empty wealth, and toxic favoritism. Heather's scandal had shattered that facade, leaving behind a fractured reputation in desperate need of rebuilding. But instead of distancing myself from the Whitaker name, I decided it was time to redefine it on my own terms. Months after Heather's arraignment, when the dust finally settled and courtroom reporters moved on to other scandals, I quietly launched the Whitaker Justice Initiative, an organization designed to mentor aspiring lawyers, especially those from overlooked or disadvantaged backgrounds. The idea was simple, yet powerful. If society kept pushing these voices to the margins, I'd create a platform to amplify them. The initiative gained momentum quickly, boosted by my newfound public profile and genuine commitment. Soon applications poured in, along with supportive notes from colleagues, community leaders, and everyday people inspired by my story. Each letter reinforced my purpose, a powerful reminder that integrity, authenticity, and perseverance mattered far more than superficial acclaim. One evening, after a long day reviewing applications with Marcy, who'd enthusiastically volunteered as program coordinator, I received an unexpected visitor. A gentle knock drew my attention to the front door, and opening it revealed Dad standing awkwardly on the porch, hands buried nervously in his coat pockets. "Lauren," he began, voice unsteady, "can I come in?" I hesitated briefly before stepping aside. He entered quietly, glancing around my small yet warmly inviting living room, visibly uncomfortable but determined. "I heard about your initiative," he said softly, clearing his throat. "I'm proud of you." His words hung awkwardly in the air between us, weighted by years of silence and unmet expectations. I studied his expression closely, finding sincerity beneath his discomfort. "Thank you," I replied cautiously. "That means a lot." Dad sighed deeply, visibly wrestling with guilt. "Lauren, I know it doesn't fix things. We failed you. Me, your mother, and Heather. We were blind, unfair. I'm not asking for forgiveness, not yet, but I want you to know, I see you now. Clearly." My throat tightened painfully, emotion swelling. I nodded slowly, letting his words sink in. "Seeing me now doesn't erase years of invisibility," I finally said softly. "But it's a start." He nodded solemnly, accepting my honesty. "It is. And maybe someday you'll let me earn back the right to be in your life properly." Tears pricked the corners of my eyes. "Maybe. I appreciate you coming." He lingered briefly before offering a tentative awkward hug, one I accepted cautiously, feeling the tentative start of healing between us. As he stepped back, Dad glanced again at the framed Whitaker Justice Initiative sign proudly displayed on my wall. "You've reclaimed our family name, Lauren," he said gently, admiration shining quietly in his eyes. "You turned shame into strength. I just hope you know how remarkable that is." As the door closed behind him, I sat quietly, absorbing the moment. Dad's visit hadn't erased past wounds, but it had cracked open the door to future reconciliation, on my terms, not theirs. The Whitaker name no longer felt like a burden. It had become a symbol of redemption, resilience, and authenticity. And I'd built that legacy myself, one step at a time. That night, surrounded by paperwork, thank you letters, and plans for the initiative's future, I felt something shift deeply inside me. My past no longer dictated my present. Instead, it fueled a powerful sense of purpose. This was the Whitaker legacy now, one rooted in justice, compassion, and integrity. And for the first time ever, I felt proud to carry my name forward. Nearly a year after that disastrous family dinner, I found myself sitting alone on a quiet bench in the courthouse courtyard, sunlight filtering softly through rustling leaves above. The world around me hummed gently. An ordinary day unfolding peacefully, completely at odds with the turmoil of that night not so long ago. Yet somehow sitting here now, the chaos of the past felt distant, like a fading memory replaced by steady calm. Today marked exactly 1 year since I officially became Judge Whitaker. 1 year since my secret ambitions became public reality, since Heather's illusions shattered, since my family's toxic expectations finally lost their grip. And 1 year of gradually realizing something profound, that true validation couldn't come from outside approval, from parents or siblings, but only from within. Heather's trial had ended months ago, with a just outcome. She faced accountability, but rather than satisfaction or vindication, I'd felt a deep sadness watching her face her consequences alone. I didn't celebrate her downfall. I mourned the loss of what our family might have been had things gone differently. Mom and Dad had slowly begun rebuilding bridges, cautiously respecting the boundaries I'd set. Things would never be perfect, but healing was possible. Slowly, carefully, built on honesty, rather than illusion. Heather remained distant, still bitter and wounded, and while I hoped she might someday confront her own truths, I'd stopped waiting for her acceptance. Because finally, sitting here quietly, feeling sunlight warming my face, I understood clearly. My worth had never depended on their approval. It wasn't measured by comparison to Heather's glamour or my family's superficial accolades. My value was intrinsic, defined entirely by my character, resilience, integrity, and yes, even my quiet rebellions. I'd spent so much energy desperately chasing their approval, never realizing the validation I'd needed most was already within me, quietly guiding my every step. I'd achieved my judgeship through unwavering determination, authenticity, and courage. I had built true, lasting relationships with people who cherished me exactly as I was. And most importantly, I had learned to define success on my own terms. No applause required. My phone buzzed gently in my pocket, breaking my reflective moment. Smiling softly, I read Marcy's simple text. "Celebration dinner tonight? You deserve this. We love you." Warmth filled me deeply. Realizing your true worth felt a lot like finally coming home, peaceful, steady, safe. I stood, brushing leaves gently from my robe, ready to head back into my courtroom, my sanctuary, carrying this newfound peace with me. Heather and my family had unknowingly given me the greatest gift, forcing me to confront their rejection and find myself fully without their approval. My journey had been long and painful, but incredibly worth it. Every step had taught me something vital. My value wasn't something others could grant or withhold, it was always mine to claim. And today, standing in this newfound clarity, I claimed it fully. This was my peace, my truth, my worth, and no one could ever take it away again. Have you ever felt invisible in your own life, constantly chasing someone else's definition of success or approval, forgetting your own worth along the way? If you've experienced anything like my journey, I want to hear from you. Please drop your story in the comments. Let's empower each other by sharing our truths. And if my journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs the reminder that it's not only okay but necessary to define success on their own terms. Because here's the truth I've learned firsthand. Waiting for validation from others will leave you empty. But claiming your worth from within will fill you with strength, with courage, and true peace. Ask yourself today, whose approval am I still waiting for? Reflect on your own strength, and please, share your truth. Together, let's rewrite the narratives we've allowed others to define. Remember, you are seen, you are enough, and your worth has always been yours alone to claim. Thank you so much for watching and for being here with me.